Hi, this is Shilpa here. Hello and welcome to this blog. Now, this is a very interesting blog because I'm going to actually take you through my understanding of a particular case that I have found in one of Boenninghausen's cured cases, right? So, what we are going to do is I'll take you through the whole process of I'll show you the entire case, and then we'll go through what might have been going on with each prescription and what must be sort of the protocol. Now, it might not be the right one because it's my take on it, but it would be some very insightful things you can find in there, filtered from my experience of working in that rural clinic with seeing so many acutes. So let's look at this case. It's a case of a farmer who was 58. 6 days before, a servant girl who had been treated allopathically for typhoid fever had died in his house. And another girl was sick as well, and she died a few days later. So it was like sort of an intense situation there. For several days he felt himself affected and was complaining of tearing in all the limbs. It was aggravated in the evening and while resting. He also had fullness and ringing in the head. This up to now would improve in open air while moving about in moderation. And in the morning he had a bitter taste in the mouth. Now, ill effects from vegetables and fat in the evening. There was no thirst. In the evening he had some chill. He was oppressed and uncomfortable in a warm room. There was the stools were hard and easy through coffee. Formerly he had suffered from stomach issues and he had used some medicine on that account. So he has taken medicine once, but it caused aggravation, and the death of that servant girl made him come and take help from Boenninghausen. So that's the case. Now let's look at what were the prescriptions and how he went around with this case. So you see on the 21st of March, he gave him Pulsatilla 200. That was one, possibly a powder. Then he gave 2 doses of Saclac, and he gave another dose of the second powder, or the second medicine was Saclac, and the third medicine was Bryonia 200, a dose to be taken every other evening. So if you can see, there's something interesting here. He's giving 2 medicines which have to be taken at separate times, but sort of one after the other on every other evening. Then on March 30th, he was quite well, but he took a bit of too much veal and ham and beer and brandy, and he had a relapse. And now he has colic and chills and violent pains in the limbs, so he was prescribed Epicac 200. Then a day later, he came back much worse, and he had great anguish and restlessness and constipation and colic and chills. So basically the same picture. He was given Pulsatilla, another remedy. The second powder and the fourth powder were possibly Saclac. The third powder was possibly arsenic 200, a dose every 12 hours. Then we'll look into April 2nd. He had again dreadful anguish and some hard knotty stools. In the evening, everything is much worse. So he was given sulfur, a couple of doses of Saclac, and arsenic. Again, a dose taken every 12 hours. On April 5, he was better, but to help with his stools, he has drunk coffee. So again, he was worse, with great anguish and alternating chills and heat. There's no sleep at all, and hard, knotty stools. So he was given Rustox and Briannia with saclec powders, so a dose to be taken every 12 hours. So if you see, he is actually repeating those two medicines with a couple of days apart. Now, on April 7th, he's much better. In the morning, he still feels there is some pressure in the abdomen, which is better by moving. And in the morning, there's still some heat and then a chill. He was given Rustox, just Rustox, and saclec powders to be taken every 12 hours. April 11th, he's about cured. Still some perspiration and weakness, but there's nothing else. So he was given nothing, so no medicine. So that he may not yield to his customary intemperance. So that was the reason why he chose placebo. And since then, he has been quite well. Now, what is exactly happening here? Now, for someone, who's just sort of looking through the whole case in one glance, it is easy to sort of think he was struggling. What was he doing? Why wasn't he waiting for that first medicine to see what's happening there? And, he was just giving the second one without really waiting for the first to complete its action in a way. So lots of things can go on, and possibly he was giving two medicines at the same time. So it's hard to know what was working. But what I did was I tried to look into and solve this case myself. So if I didn't know what he was doing, and I just had this sort of a case in front of me, what would I do? So this is the totality I would look at reading the case for the first time. So I'm using Boenninghausen's approach here, and I'm using his approach of taking the location, sensation, modality, and concomitance as a complete symptom. And if you can see here, he has some really peculiar rubrics, and it's a complete case. So there's no reason why we should actually work at stage 1 and 2 for this case, because it's a complete case with location, sensation, modalities, and some really interesting peculiars, concomitants. So I just think this is a beautiful example of a case you can actually work at stage 3 and using his approach. And so I used the generalization approach here. Now, we're not using all these symptoms for the simple reason because we're trying to use the most important symptoms which could be generalized. All right. So I've solved this case using my software, which is the HomeoQuest, and I'm now using about 6 or 7 very important rubrics. The first thing I use is fever with chills, because I think that's a very strong symptom to start off with. It's a location plus a sensation together. It's a case of fever with chills. Chill is predominant. Then there are 4 or 5 important aggravations which I think need to be taken in this case. Aggravation evening, aggravation warm room, aggravation fat, aggravation vegetables, and I took 2 peculiar concomitants with this fever. One's thirstlessness and one's bitter taste. Now, I did not take the other associated complaints because I thought I didn't want to sort of disturb this picture, which was the general peculiar symptoms, factual, right in my face there. So when I take all these symptoms, if you can look, the strongest remedy which comes up is Briannia. Now, if I wasn't repertorizing this case and I was just looking at my material medical knowledge, and if I go back and just look at the range of symptoms there. Aggravation in the evening, better in open air, bitter taste in the mouth, thirstlessness, evening chills, aggravation, fat. I'm actually looking from just my keynote understanding. I'm looking at pulsatilla because it just comes up right there from my mature medical knowledge. And what I find when I repertoire actually is Bryonia comes up very strongly. And if I look at pulsatilla, it's like way down there. I mean, it's not one of the most prominent remedies coming up out there. Now, what I do is I did another totality of the same case and I added those 2 or 3 concomitant symptoms, which I did not use in the first case because I wanted to see how would that change my picture without really disturbing this present totality. So I did another repertorization. I kept all the rubrics similar and I added 3 more rubrics. So I added tearing in the extremities, I added fullness in the head, and I added hard stool. So this basically is the entire picture of and the complete symptom, which is generalized. And again, if you see, in fact, a Bryonia is emphasized much more strongly. And if I look, pulsatilla is nowhere on the first page. So at this point, and this is not the first time you were looking at such a scenario where a remedy comes up strongly just from your material medical knowledge, but another remedy comes up strongly if you repertoire it. And in that case, I have myself given both these remedies because I didn't want to miss out, the pros and cons of using just one. And I just thought that was something which he must have done. So he's given pulsatilla 200, he's given a couple of, he's given Bryonia 200. And it's interesting to see that he's using 200 as a potency here, which is again a higher potency comparatively. So because the symptoms are really very peculiar and they're very strong and sharp, and he's a robust person, so the susceptibility is very strong here as well. And if you see on March 30th, he actually is well. And he was well all these days, but after taking veal and ham and beer and brandy, he had a relapse. So in a way, now what we are looking at is he has a relapse from a specific exciting factor, and he now has the same picture coming back again. Now this is what I would call another second picture. It's like a relapse of the whole state. Now what he's done here is very interesting. He's given a dose of Epicac. Now if I right now from my place, I would look at, I need something which has ailments from bad effects of veal and all these different things, plus something which also matches the existing picture. But if I go and look at veal aggravates and I look at the remedies there, you see Epicac comes up strongly. So possibly he's just given Epicac based on aggravation from veal and as a one-off sort of strong causative factor there. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. So the patient is much worse than better. And so what now we have is this relapse picture, which has the constipation and the colic and the chill. But there is also this great anguish and restlessness. So this I would call as a relapse picture, which has the same state, but it has 1 or 2 additional symptoms. And for me, that additional part is this great anguish and restlessness. So he gave pulsatilla, which was anyway for him matching the whole state. And he gave arsenic, possibly because arsenic matches that one extra bit, which is the anguish and the restlessness. So after that, you see the anguish is still there, but now the stools are much more harder, knotty. So it's like the hard stools comes up strongly again. So he's given arsenic again, which is strongly for the dreadful anguish which is going on, which is a strong keynote for prescribing arsenic. But for the naughty, strong, hard stools, he has decided to give another remedy, and that's sulfur. So it's important to know that the other picture of colic and chill, and that's gone. So basically, pulsatilla has covered that part. So it's a new layer in a way where the anguish, the restlessness, and the hard naughty stools are the presenting picture. The basic picture of the pulsatilla and the bryonia is basically gone. We're looking at just the very superficial, the presenting state right now. And I think this is one very peculiar thing I learned in acute case takings, is you are looking at a changing scenario, and you're looking at what are the most presenting symptoms at this particular moment. It could be like 2 days later, 3 days later from the previous remedy. The remedy has done something. Like for me in this case, that relapse picture, pulsatilla has covered the colic and the chill and the fever in some way. But what is now prominent, which was never a part of pulsatilla, was the anguish, the restlessness, and these really constipated hard stools. So we are looking for a remedy which covers this most presenting issues here. Now, why would he give sulfur? So we look at hard naughty stools, and I looked at evening aggravates, because everything is again aggravated in the evening. And what we find is sulfur comes up as the strongest remedy there. So that was possibly the reason he gave sulfur. And he kept going with arsenic, because arsenic is still that state which is very prominent, which has the restlessness and the mental anxiety. Okay, so after sulfur, what do you find is he's better. But to help with his stools, he has taken coffee. So last night he's worse again, with great anguish, with alternating chills and heat, and there's no sleep at all. And the stools are still hard naughty. So what's happened is, this is a new picture now. And you have this great anguish, which is still going on in spite of repeated doses of arsenic. But there's this new symptom, which was never there before, which is alternation of chills and heat. And the sleep and the naughty stools are still there. So at this point, he decides to give Rustox and go back to bryonia. Now, I don't know why he must have gone back to bryonia, but I definitely know why he gave Rustox. So if you look at the picture again, I've taken anguish again, because obviously arsenic isn't helping. I've taken chill alternating with heat, and I've taken coffee aggravates, because every time he has coffee, there is a relapse in some form. And the remedy which you get is Rustox. Now, this is an interesting situation. Rustox comes up so strongly. It's known to be the remedy for typhoid in many ways. And it also complements bryonia in many ways. So Rustox and bryonia could have been the combination he looked for. He's much improved. In the morning, he still feels a bit of pressure in the abdomen, which is better by moving. And there's some heat and then a chill. So there's a bit of alternation still going on. Better by moving is also a very strong symptom of Rustox. So he keeps the person on Rustox again. By April 11th, everything is gone. There's a bit of perspiration and weakness, but there's nothing else. And he was given some placebo powders, which is quite interesting, so that he doesn't take anything else to sort of, disturb this whole process. And since then, he's been well. So let me summarize what are the things that I really learned from just not this case, but studying many such cases by Boenninghausen. And secondly, filtered through my experience of working with so many acutes and using this approach with in lots of different scenarios. Now, it's not just because Boenninghausen said so. That's why this approach works. It is about trying and using a particular approach in your own practice and then trying to find out what is it that's working and what's not working and going to the next level. And that's exactly what is about, getting your results better and learning and growing and evolving as a homeopath for me. Okay, so the three things if I learn which has helped me tremendously in acutes would be these three issues. One is, which is very unconventional, but it is about using and being able to work with partial similimums. Now, the word similimum is tricky and it has a lot of negative things associated with it. But when I use a similimum, here I'm just meaning there is a picture in front of you. It is a case at stage 3, which means it has peculiars in it. It's not just common symptoms. If there were common symptoms, you would have worked with stage 1 and 2 approaches. But this is a case where you have really beautiful peculiars. But unfortunately, one remedy is just not sort of matching the whole case. In that case, you can actually use more than one remedy. You can use 2 remedies which cover 2 different aspects of the peculiar picture. That's the whole understanding here. So like Bryony and Pulsadilla in that first case were a part of using 2 different remedies which match different parts of the picture. And if I look at that case really prominently, what I guess is, although Pulsadilla came up very strongly Matra Medica wise, Bryony matched it in a repertorial situation because there were aspects of the case, example, aggravation vegetables was never a part of Pulsadilla. So it just was pushed down in the repertorization table. Doesn't mean it didn't still match the peculiars there. But Bryony was a much more stronger match. But having said that, Pulsadilla had a track record. So possibly that was the whole idea of using 2 remedies at the same time. Similarly, using remedies like, arsenic and rust, or Bryony and rust tox in tandem. Again, 2 remedies which alternate and complement each other well. So basically it's about using and trying to understand what 2 remedies go together in that particular case, matching different aspects of the same case, and it still works very well. Another thing which I learned was about this thing about if there is a new picture, if there is a new layer, possibly from the previous remedy having taken one layer away and hence a new layer is exposed, or an exciting factor that brings in a new layer, you use a new remedy. Now this is the mistake I did so many times in my practice is if a remedies work, like in that case, if Pulsadilla and Bryony are working, why not just continue with that? Why make a change? But the problem is there is a new set of symptoms which Pulsadilla and Bryony are not actually helping. Say like, naughty stools, hard stools, or alternation of chill and heat, and that's not and that is not the time to give a remedy which has worked well in the past, but a time to look at, well, the remedy doesn't cover it, so we'll give a new remedy. And that's how the rust tox helped. And the third thing which I've realized time and again in such acutes, where you have peculiars, you choose to work with peculiars. It doesn't work if you give a remedy which is known to be good for typhoids or which is known to work in combinations. Like, there has been cases where, the combination of belladonna and aconite and whatever works well in any form of fever, or baptisia works very well in typhoid. Well, that's not the whole idea. Yes, if there wasn't a picture which was as peculiar, that's the only way you can choose to work at. But now you have a good case. You have beautiful symptoms at stage 3. You have really characteristic physical symptoms there. Then you use those, because that's the only way you're going to get rapidly to where you want to go. So I hope that makes it simpler. It's never very simple, but yes, it just helps it make much more better to know that there is some variation to the whole approach of using one remedy one at a time, sticking with that and not making those changes as often, and being able to use two remedies together and making those rapid changes and still be able to, get a wonderful result there. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the case, and I hope you enjoyed learning something new. I would love to know what is your take on the case, and possibly I was completely wrong there, and that's okay. But I would love to know what you think about this whole thing. Thank you, and take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.